Today's gospel is one of my most favorite passages in the Bible. Jesus is talking about his sacred heart. Learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. So the idea of learning from the sacred heart is a beautiful image. Learning about his love for us, that we may grow in love of him. Now, between the two churches, I have over 11 images of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in statues, in painting, in stained glass windows. And Jesus promises, one of the promises of the Sacred Heart, there's 12 promises, is to bless the homes where his heart is exposed and honored. So that's why I encourage people to have a painting or a statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus in their homes, that it's a reminder of the love of Jesus, and he's honored and he promises blessings. So anything that can get you blessings and graces without a lot of work, hey, I like that. That's high efficiency grace. So another one is the Blessed Mother promises great graces to those who wear the miraculous medal. All you got to do is wear it. Well, it has to be blessed by a priest, but that's easy enough. I'll be floating around somewhere if you need me. And I usually bless the miraculous medals I get in the mail. As soon as they come, I open the box and bless them. That way, in case I forget, it's already done. So our church here has, on the front of it, it's wearing, so to speak, a giant miraculous medal in stained glass right on the front of the church. And so, on the back of on the back of the miraculous medal is the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So let's take a look at this little beautiful, obscure, short passage. Come to me. Well, it starts out, it's wonderful. We want to come to Jesus. Jesus is our life, our love, our hope, our source of all good. So we want to go to him. He says, come to me. So it's a beautiful three-word invitation. All you who labor and are burdened. Well, that's probably pretty much everybody, huh? I'd say everybody's got a labor and they're carrying some burdens. And I will give you rest. Now, as we look at this, we see a couple of words that repeat themselves. So we see the word burden again. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. So what's going on here? Jesus is talking about burdens. Well, I always use the image we have in our mural, which is from the Gospel of St. Luke, which shows the good thief and the bad thief. Now, they all are carrying the exact, objectively speaking, they have the same burden. Jesus, the good thief, St. Dismas, who's saved there with Jesus, and the bad thief. And so all of them have objectively the same amount of pain. But they carry the burden differently. Let's take a look. So, the worldly, what kind of burden do they have? What does the bad thief have to look forward to after he gets done being tortured to death? Nothing. People of the worldly mentality, you just go on the ground at the end and that's it. What a lousy view of life and eternity. No hope of reuniting with your loved ones in relationships that began in this world and the next. Now, I'm hoping, God willing, I make it to heaven, I'm going to get to see my mom and my dad, my Uncle Neil and my Aunt Frances, who are a big part of my life, my brother Tom, who just passed away a few months ago. So unfortunately, July is kind of the month of the Exodus. My dad, my grandmother, my Uncle Neil, and actually a couple of friends died in July. A lot of people have left me in July. So, I think about them, and I think, in addition to finally being with the Lord, I hope in heaven, that I'll get to be with them. And the love that is exchanged between all of us, the beauty of that, the love of the family, the love of God, all coming together in heaven, never to end. No more broken heart, no more death, no more sorrow, no more pain. Jesus says, behold, I make all things new in the book of Revelation. I will wipe away every tear from their eye. No more sorrow, sadness, or death. But it's here. Oh yeah, it's here. And that's the burden we bear. We got to deal with it. We got to walk through the valley of the shadow of death, as it says in Psalm 23, and that's this world. The shadow of death is always over us. But your rod and your staff comfort me. That's a symbol, the staff, like Moses had, the shepherd's staff, the idea of the authority and power of God shepherding us through the valley of darkness, through the burdens. So we see the phrase of rest. I will give you rest. What does that mean? Well, Psalm 62, in God alone is my soul at rest. If we learn from him, from the Sacred Heart, to recognize that he is our life, and there should be no life in that sense, on that level of love and intensity with anyone or anything else. God must be the primary source of intense, intimate love in our lives, above everything and everyone else. But again, I love my mom and dad because God gave them to me. Because I know the love that I got from them had its origin in God. So God is the source of all love. So what else do we see when we look at this? So there's a contrast between the burden of the worldly, there's the bad thief. He doesn't look too happy, does he? And then there's the hope of the saved. So what's going on? St. Dismas is there suffering the same thing, but we remember the beautiful conversation. He rebukes the bad thief who's picking on Jesus, says, if you're the Christ, save us and yourself. Let's get down from this cross. He wanted to get down from the cross to go back to sinning. No. Sin has a time limit. It's coming to an end. And the sinners that are involved, now, obviously I'm a sinner. I'm not saying I'm not. But I recognize there's, a limit on sin. It's only in this world, and it ends for eternity when I leave this world and I leave this body here. And so that's why I need to concentrate on the soul. So St. Dismas, after he rebukes the other thief, he says to Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And Jesus says to him, today you will be with me in paradise. Now, I'm just guessing, but I'm pretty sure the good thief who had to stay on that cross probably for a couple more hours in agony before he got tortured to death probably was dealing with it a little better. He might have even had a smile. Wow, I'm going to be with Jesus in paradise today. Who cares how horrible this pain is? It's coming to an end. I have hope. We suffer with hope and a recognition that our suffering has a value to deal with our sins and to help bring us closer to Christ, to imitate Christ. We see a value there. The worldly know. They see suffering as valueless, and their greatest value is pleasure, not the love of God and love of neighbor and kindness and those sorts of things, the spiritual values. So there's a difference between the perspective of the worldly and those who follow Christ. So as we look further, so Jesus says, come to me all who labor are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. Now when I was a kid, I used to see that word yoke. He says it again, my yoke is easy and my burden's light. All I could ever think of as a kid, yoke is the yolk in the egg, And I thought, well, the L's not there. What's going on? Take my yoke. Jesus is making some good eggs for breakfast. I don't know. But it's something that you see mostly in the ancient world and in more third world countries. I mean, going down Main Street, you don't see a yoke of oxen going together it's a piece of wood that connects them together so that as they pull, whatever they're pulling, a plow or people, whatever, they combine their power and pull in unison. So what is the yoke of Jesus? The cross. And we are like Simon of Cyrene, and we need to look across the cross and see Jesus. And the two of us are carrying the same cross together. And so our willpower and Christ with his grace carrying the cross of Jesus. So Simon's on one side, Jesus on the other, and they are together carrying the one cross. That's the way we need to view our life's burdens and sufferings, that Jesus is right there with us and he's helping us to carry our cross through life until we finally make it to heaven. Take my yoke upon you. It's the cross. and learn from me. We learn through hardship. We learn through suffering for Christ. It's not exactly an easy way to learn anything, but we do. And so, learn from me, for I am meek and humble of heart. What's meek mean? Meek does not mean weak. Meek means you have the ability to strike back in revenge, but you tolerate it, to be kind to your enemy and win them over with a heart of love and kindness. That's what Jesus did. Jesus is meek and humble of heart. He's on that cross, and he let them spit on him and mock him and crucify him. And he just said, Father, forgive them, they're not what they do. Now just think if I was on that cross. Can you imagine? I had all that power. You think I'd sit there and let them spit at me and mock me? You would see the Old Testament theophany vengeance, like God did at the base of Mount Sinai, where the earth opened up and they went alive into hell with Korah's rebellion. Now there's a passage to scare you. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. They go alive into hell. Sorry, no time to die. You're just going straight into hell alive. It's a scary passage. So I'm just saying, I would not have the patience of God on the cross. It would be very hard for me having the ability to strike back and not do it. But Jesus didn't. Jesus has all the power in the universe. But he stood there, and he gives us an example of the need for us to be forgiving of our enemies, to bear wrongs patiently. Powerful, powerful example of the Lord on the cross. Powerful example of humility. There he was with God, as God. He's God with all power in heaven and earth. And yet, he humbly submits to mockery and suffering, crucifixion for our sins out of love for us. He didn't need to suffer. We needed him to suffer for our sins to free us from the punishment. For my yoke is easy and my burden light. Well, compared to what the worldly have to carry, ultimately, the burden of the Christian, the disciple of Christ, is light, because we suffer with hope. We suffer knowing that Jesus is next to us, and we are carrying the cross together to heaven.